This episode is sponsored by DroneWorks Ireland, your go-to place when it comes to buying a drone, repairing a drone, and also when you need professionals to carry out any aerial work you may need. Check out their website at www.droneworksireland.ie. Delighted now to be joined by sports journalist Kevin Egan to look back on Galway's victory over Offaly. Galway have got up and running with their first victory in the National Hurling League, defeating Offaly 223 to 18 points. Kevin, safe to say Galway probably just did what they had to do with the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, it was, to me, the way I described it was Galway were utterly dominant in the first half. Like from an Offaly point of view, it was really demoralising how dominant they were. If you weren't in St. Brendan's Park, you didn't understand just how strong that wind was. I think Jason Rabbit got 1 point from about 45 metres out, and that was as far that was the longest distance strike into the wind by either team. So Galway were 9-6 up at half time, having hurled into that. Honestly, at that stage, I would have feared a very unpleasant result. And based on past history, if Galway were a Tipperary or a team like that take great satisfaction in beating up on a beaten dog, then it probably could have been that. Instead, like Micheál Donoghue, I know his post-match afterwards talked about he was annoyed they didn't push on, and he's right. Galway didn't push on. They stopped playing with kind of purpose and precision and thought, and they started, oh, we have the wind behind us, we can go along, and it became that kind of, well, because we can go along, we should go along, even though it's not the right thing to do, or it's not always the right thing to do. So, but none of that mattered. I think at one stage the lead was down to 5, maybe. But once Cathal Mannion got the goal, the game was dead, and Galway played like the game was dead. So, yeah, I wouldn't be castigating Galway for not pushing on and winning by 20, but at the same time, they were comfortably better.
Just with that Breeze Burr at the weekend, obviously Galway played against it in the opening half, and there was obviously a lot of wides there between the first and second half. For supporters and people listening who weren't there, do you think maybe some of that efficiency, maybe to let Galway down at the weekend, does some of that come down to how strong that breeze was?
It does to a certain extent. Now, it was fairly straight down the ground. Sometimes you'll have a tricky diagonal breeze, but it's just instinct that like you'll change your technique. It was a breeze that was strong enough that it's not just interfering with the flight of the ball, it's probably even interfering with the stroke of the hurl. It's interfering with how you choose to swing. It's interfering with your kind of maybe subconsciously forcing a shot that you don't have to force, even if it is 35, 40 meters out. So I would excuse it to a reasonable degree. I mean, no, the Galway's wides were in the first half, and to me, I don't think you would be anything other than delighted with that first half. Now, I would say Offaly played into Galway's hands in that Killian Trayer's had another outstanding game at fullback. He has been exceptional for me this year, really reveling in that fullback role. But Dahi Burke sat very, very deep as the centre, and Offaly played into Dahi's hands by going long anyway, instead of trying to go through the lines a little bit and giving him the question, do I need to pull out? Do I need to cover off? Like say Conor Doyle was our guy playing centre forward. Now Conor is would have been under 20 last year. You know, he's probably one of those guys, he's reaching a little bit. He has a lot of development still to do. You know, I don't mean to be harsh, but let's put it this way: most of the guys Dahi will mark this year would be much more experienced, much more developed hurlers than Conor. And if Dahi was playing like that, other hurlers might be able to take advantage of it to a much greater degree. Conor didn't, Offaly didn't. We made a hero out of Dahi Burke entirely by just giving him loads of long ball to mop up where he could just throw in, pick up breaking ball and the whole lot. And then Galway went through the lines and did it really, really well from there. So no, I wouldn't castigate them for the wides at all.
Was there an element that you were impressed nearly then in the opening period by Galway against that breeze going in 9-6 ahead of the break?
Oh, of course. Oh no, 100%. I was impressed by Galway. I mean, look, that first piece, the puzzle where Offaly played into Galway's hands by hitting long ball into 3-on-2, 4-on-3, 4-on-2. Like we did that an awful lot, and that played into Galway's hands. But at the end of the day, all that means is Galway have the ball 20 metres out from their own goal, and they still have to pull off maybe 2 stick passes, possibly even 3 stick passes to get into a scoring zone. And not alone did they do that, they did that while keeping the ball out of contact, uh, while using the hand pass cleverly, but not having too many handling errors. And like that, creating scoring chances in, I won't say a lot of space, but in far more space than you should get when the scoring zone is basically 4 or 5 meters outside what would be a football arc if there was a football arc in Bourne. They wouldn't be doing such things as that. But if there was a football arc, you're talking 3 or 4 meters outside of that. And that was the absolute outside of your scoring zone. And still Galway created, like I think it was what, 8 first half wides,
Mm.
one shot dropped short, 9 points.
Yeah,
Um,
big chance by Colin Malloy too, just before the break, the goal chance there. In fairness, it was a good save by Liam Hoare, but if he probably looks back on it, he probably could maybe feel he could do better.
yeah, well, look, if you were to say there was a negative, the one thing I would say is that Galway got 2 goals out of 4 goal chances. We got no goals out of 5 goal chances. And some of those were very, very good. Now, one was an absolutely heroic block by Pádraig Mannion.
Yeah.
That was as good a play, that was as good a defensive play as you will see all year. Um, Maybe Terraginen could have shortened the stick a little bit more, but in fairness, he couldn't have seen that coming. It was brilliant for Mannion. But like Donald Shirley put one over the bar. Dan Burke had one blocked. Uh, Brian Dignan put one into the side netting in the second half when realistically he probably should have kicked it. And there's one more I'm missing there somewhere that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But so like you could argue, like in terms of goal chances, that was the one. It wouldn't have taken an awful lot for that game to be 123 to 217 in that sense. But having said that, 11 points was the fair reflection of the difference between the teams.
You mentioned earlier Killian Trayers. He's really developing into the role really well. Dyberk obviously at 6 as well. If you said to me, O'Donoghue at the start of the year, it's probably he wanted to have a 3 and a 6 and have them consistently there. It probably has to be one of the biggest positives for Galway throughout this league to sort of look like the spine of defence is now coming together.
Oh, absolutely. Like that's look, I'll be the first hands up cynic here. I would have said Killian Trayers, like a good man, would you go kick football because that's where your intercounty future lies. I would have said that to him as an 18 or 19-year-old. Hands up. I did not see this level coming, but he has been absolutely fantastic. It's just worked out that way. I cover games all across the Midlands and West. I've actually been at all 3 Galway hurling matches this year, and he's been very, very impressive for me. I do stand by that. I think other centre forwards will test Dahi and they won't let him do like it would have been very easy. It would have been wrong, but it would have been very easy to give Dahi Burke man of the match for that game on Sunday. I don't know if there was an official man of the match or but for me, what Trayers for one would have been a good bit better than him. Not because Dahi did anything wrong, but because Offaly made it easy for him. Um, I would say if you're going out against, like who the Galway, I don't know who the Galway have next, but like
Waterford this Sunday, yeah.
Waterford this Sunday, you still have Limerick to play. Like, you know, will he have it? Will he have it like that against Aidan O'Connor? I'm not actually sure who, off the top of my head, who is playing centre forward for Waterford, but I know like Aidan O'Connor had an incredible game at centre forward for Limerick on Saturday night. You know, Dahi Burke won't be able to do that when he's up against Aidan O'Connor. He won't be able to do that when he's up against kind of, like just in generally speaking, Kilkenny, maybe Keane Kenny or someone like that would go into that role and stretch him out a little bit. You could be looking at Owen Cody there, so those are very, very different challenges. So I would say I don't think the centre back thing is a done and dusted argument yet. I think, look, Dahi Burke is the man in possession. I don't think he's going to go back to Gavin Lee back there. Um, but at the same time, I don't think that's done and dusted. But yeah, look, overall, Donoghue will say he's carefully happy with that. But in terms of Trayers, he must be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, you mentioned Gavin Lee there. He obviously goes off injured in the first half, and Daniel Loftus and Darren Eary had to obviously miss this game as well through injury, and Rory Burke's obviously still carrying a knock. I suppose the one downside is Gavin Lee picking up a hamstring injury, which probably is up against it now. Waterford this Sunday, Kilkenny the following Saturday to miss those two games anyways to start with.
Yeah, now, can I be honest? Until Gavin Lee went off, the one line where Offaly were breaking even or maybe even getting a slight edge was midfield. And I thought Galway got a lot better when Keenan Fahy came in. That's not a slight on Gavin Lee. Look, he's Galway's captain and he's a fine hurler and all of that. I don't think he was pulling up any trees. Whether he had an issue going into the game or something, only the Galway medical team and Gavin himself know that. Um, but look, I don't think it's a case of Gavin Lee's absence is a huge blow for the Waterford match. I think that's a stretch. And again, this goes back to we were talking about this before we came on air about like the depth that Galway have is another world what Offaly would be working with. Like Offaly were missing players at the weekend as well. We weren't missing anyone maybe better than Galway were missing, but the quality of replacements Galway can bring in is a world ahead of what Offaly have. So if Keenan Fahy comes in to replace Gavin Lee, that's not a problem. That's not a backward step as far as I'm concerned. Definitely, I thought Keenan Fahy steadied the ship. Likewise, okay, you're missing Daniel Loftus. TJ Brennan came in. Arguably, the only player for me that Galway is missing who the replacements haven't yet stepped up, and I accept Tiernan Killeen like would have been later back into the panel, but is John Fleming.
Yeah,
Fleming
big loss.
was excellent at the start of the year. He has really pushed on. Darren Neary obviously still very, very young for this. He's getting great experience at the moment. He had some good moments with University of Galway in the Fitzgibbon Cup. Is Darren Neary realistically going to get, let's say, is he going to get across the five Leinster Championship games? Is he going to get 200 Championship minutes there? I doubt it. He's getting a lot closer to 70 to 100 minutes, I would say. So I don't think, but Fleming would be one who would be getting that 200 minutes and probably would be getting something closer to 300 minutes if he was available. And that for me, he's the only one that I would say is because you can say, okay, that you have Conor Whelan obviously got his first time of the year, but Conor Whelan's not going out in the half forward line. Aaron Nyland has been playing in the half forward line. I like what Aaron Nyland is doing in the sense that to me he's doing the right things. He's playing summer hurling and working hard and he's putting the work rate in. He's trying to do the right things and he's doing the things that you would want him to do on dry ground. He's not getting the reward because it's not dry ground and it's not working for him. But I'm still not convinced that come the summer, I'd say he's more likely to be at 15 than 12. So that
What?
wing forwards are the only place I would have a little bit of concern.
Yeah, what have you made of Aaron Ireland playing that role? Because I think for everyone watching, seeing Aaron Ireland rip up the championship for Clanbridge inside and in that role, and for Galway minors and
Mm.
Galway 20s, and even Pearse Stadium last year on their run to the Crow Cup final. It's been a surprise that they're playing him in this role, but as you said, he has done quite well in that role too.
He has, and look, I'm always conscious of the fact too that like as guys add size, and Aaron Island is adding size, as guys add size, it's quite natural that they maybe drop further back and back down the pitch. Um, like he didn't actually tog out there at the weekend, but Dan Ravenhill, who would have been, say, Offaly minor captain 4 years ago, one of the main guys for the 20s last year, missed most of the All Ireland winning campaign in 24 on account of injury. But like he was always a forward, and he's actually lined out at wing back. So it's not uncommon for guys to kind of, as they add that little bit of broadness and heft to the body, that they'll step back out and go more into the middle third a little bit. But yeah, I mean, for me, the profile of Nyland, he still does look. Look, I'm not going to second guess Micheál Donoghue here, but he does to me. He looks like an inside forward. Donoghue's watching him on the training ground. He's watched him for every 1 minute of Aaron Nyland hurling that I've watched. Donoghue's probably watched 30. So I'm not going to say for a second that he's wrong, but it does surprise me. And I would say, I don't think you could say it's worked. I think I'm impressed with the fact that he's doing the hard stuff. He's getting stuck into the rucks. Even though this isn't naturally his game, he's getting stuck into the rucks. He's doing the defending from the front. He's doing all the things that, if you like, what did they say? Like, be good at the things that require no skill. Um, he's doing all that. So you could not fault the chap in the slightest. But at the end of the day, like, to me, it just seems like to get the best out of him, you're still going to want him inside. And I would say he's probably still, for all Colin Malloy being impressive at the weekend, Declan McLaughlin has come in and out and so on. Like Tom Monaghan as an inside forward doesn't. Ironically, I would bring Tom Monaghan out before I would bring Aaron Nyland out. But again, who am I to tell Micheál Donoghue? But I would be surprised if you asked me to lay odds on it. I would still say most of Aaron Nyland's minutes in the summer will be as an inside forward.
The big positive coming away, I suppose, from Bear was maybe Aaron Island and Jason Rabbit. They were doing lots of good work, but maybe they weren't getting the scores from playing in the opening two games. But then you look at it between Rabbit, Malloy, and Island at the weekend, 9 points between them.
Yeah. Look, I mean, to be fair, if you were at the games, you couldn't but be impressed by Jason Rabbit. I mean, it is wrong that a teenager is able to play like that in that role. It is unfair on guys that have done 5 and 6 years of strength and conditioning, and they're looking at this guy and going, "How many hours have I put in to, lifting weights?" And this fecker is able to do that, But and a huge part of what Jason Rabbit is doing is creating scores for other players around him. Obviously, yeah, you'd love to be in a situation where he's averaging 2 or 3 flags from play himself. But I mean, to me, that's been again an unqualified success. That man is at least 2 years ahead of where he should be on the curve at this stage. Um, Malloy, like, yeah, look, there's no question Malloy can finish. Um, I just, I do wonder, is there a little bit too much? Is there, he's going to have to figure out a way to win bad ball a bit more. He's not always going to get the kind of ball. Like I said, the approach play from Galway in the first half on Sunday was absolutely exemplary. You could not fault it. Um, and I think, if memory serves, he got two, if not three, of his points in the first half.
Yeah,
You
two in the
know,
first half. Yeah.
two in the first half. So, you know, he should have been, even though the quality of ball wasn't as good, there still was a decent amount of ball going in. It was ball that gave the defender a 50-50 chance. And lo and behold, Malloy was much quieter. So that's still a concern there. And when you're in a situation where you do have a Connor Whelan waiting in the wings, like, that to me kind of says that Malloy still has a little bit of ground to make up in that regard.
Just one player, Keane Daniels. How do you feel he did on Sunday? It was obviously we've seen him play for Tommy Larkin's centre half back for all the club championships, so it's a surprise in one sense to see him in the middle of the field.
Yeah. I go back to what I said, that, like, I mean, you were up against, like, for me, the best midfielder probably on the day was Keenan Fahy, marginally followed by Cathal King for Offaly. Um, I would say there wasn't an awful lot between those two. And until Fahy was on the pitch, I would have said Cathal King was hurling a decent amount of ball. He was doing well in the scrapping. I don't, yeah, look, again, it could be a long term thing. It could be part of maybe develop Keane's awareness with stuff like breaking ball because, if you're operating in the half back line, you are the guy contesting that initial possession as the ball lands down out of the clouds. You're not the guy trying to do the Dennis Rodman on it and read where the break and read where the rebound is going to go. So maybe there might have been I don't envisage this as your long term role, but I think operating here in a game where realistically Galway were probably going to win it anyway, this might have been part of an educational experience for him. Because, yeah, like you, I wouldn't have seen an inordinate amount of it. Again, the Galway club hurling I tend to see, I'm far more likely to be assigned a game in Duggan Park or in Athenry than to be sent round to the games in Loughrea or Gort, which is where Tommy Larkins would be more likely to be deployed. But so he wouldn't be one of the Galway players I would know as well as,
Mm.
for argument's sake, the Manions or something like that. And that's nothing to do with the age, like even a Jason Rabbit or one of those. But that's a long winded way of saying I'm not convinced that he was picked at midfield with a view to being the midfielder in the long term.
The goals were taken pretty well. Cathal Mannion's goal, brilliant finish. Conor Whelan on to 1-1 off the bench as well at the weekend.
Ah, yeah. Look, I mean, Colin Mannions was a sublime finish now.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I don't need to tell you, following Galway hurling, if Galway were looking at Offaly and saying who's the 3 or 4 players we'd love to pick out I mean, Liam Hoare in goals, playing for University of Galway this year. He's exceptional. Um, Mark Troy hasn't done an awful lot wrong, but I think there has been a sense for a while in Offaly that Mark was sort of keeping the jersey warm for Liam to come along, and you saw the save he did make. And to be honest, he's done that a few times this year. Um, he's a very, very popular chap, but he's also a very, very good goalkeeper. So it has to be an exceptional shot to beat him from the distance. I think Mannion's shot was probably 15, 16 meters out. Has to be a pretty good shot to beat him from there. Um, I would say good instinct from Conor Whelan for the other. He did have a size mismatch. I'm going to say it was Breckin Kavanagh who was covering that spot. It could have been Breckin Kavanagh or it could have been Patrick Taff. Either or, Conor Whelan would have a size mismatch. Those guys, they don't have the option of maybe going right up against him. They have to stay goal side that extra yard or two, which meant he got the ball into his possession a little bit more or a little bit more easily. Um, so again, look, I'd say the success story for Conor Whelan is that he comes back on, he gets whatever he got, maybe 20 minutes, something like that. And he got a couple of scores to feel good about himself. I don't think I'd be suddenly saying, oh yeah, Conor's back at his very, very best. We're going to see Championship Conor Whelan next weekend. Still a bit early for that, but, happy with that as a first step, I would say, is how Galway will feel about that.
It was obviously just so important for Galway to get the win, no matter what, after the first two games encouraging performances, but obviously need to get points on the board to stay in this division. And you could tell, even as you mentioned from the outset, Micheál Donoghue, bit disappointed that maybe they didn't push on in that second half.
Yeah. Look, it's some of that is a psychological thing. Like oh God, this is going to be clipped and sent everywhere. But I do keep going back to Tipperary. There's a kind of you often get the sense with Tipperary that we want to beat you, but we kind of want to traumatize you too. And it would be both, it would almost be a criticism of them that, like there have been times historically when a tip team, certainly more than anyone else, are at their absolute best when you're done, when you're bet, and kind of beaten up on the little guy to a certain extent. And I'm not going to call Offaly a little guy here, but Tipperary would call us a little guy. Um, you know, Galway wouldn't have historically had that instinct to the same extent. It is, and it's a more natural. Like I would say, more counties are like that when they win the game. Like I'll put it this way: Limerick are probably going to end the league. Their biggest margin of victory in any game is more than likely going to be their win over the All Ireland champions. Because Limerick's performances against Cork, Clare, and Cork, Clare, and Tip are completely different. Like they got caught on the hop by Dublin last year. If Limerick needed to beat Offaly by 25 points in Tullamore on Sunday, I'd give them a very decent chance of doing so. But I don't expect them to do that. I don't think it's in their nature. I'd say they'll tap over 31, 32 points. We might score 117, 118, something in that ballpark, and everyone will go home and they'll all have their dinner and they'll all be grand. So in that sense, the bit that would maybe bother me from Galway's point of view is not so much that they didn't have that kind of bloodlust, that, we're going to make them scared to cross the Banagher Bridge ever again. It was more that they started doing the wrong thing. Like they started hitting a lot of the same ball that Offaly was guilty of in the first half. Like our half back line actually looked very good in the second half. And 50% of that is that they are good hurlers. Like Jack Clancy was making his first start of the season. Killian Sampson was making his first start of the season. Donald Shirley started one game, got about, I can't remember how long he was on the pitch for, but early enough and went off injured. So effectively, and you can say this is a daft thing to do in the modern game, we had a half back line that every one of them were as good as playing their first game of the year. But by the second half, they looked good. But a lot of that was down to Galway's options on the ball and trying to look for that kind of longer delivery or just, like I'll just send it down with a bit of snow on it into Colin Malloy or into Tom Monaghan or whatever. And that didn't work out as well for them. That would be the bit I'd say they'll focus on more than, why didn't you want to tattoo these lads like?
Just on Offaly, obviously you covered them quite a bit. Over the last year in Tullamore, obviously it got away from Offaly in the Leinster Championship. It got away from Offaly again last Sunday. It looks like Offaly are up against it to stay in Division 1 for next year at the minute too. Where do you feel there?
Okay, well, first question, or first part of that, our two remaining games are Limerick and Cork. So, and we have no points. So I think we're not up against it to stay up. We're not staying up. But on top of that, no tears will be shed. None whatsoever. This was where this team is at in their development. Like I said, 8 of the guys who started against Galway were under 20 last year. And that's not because we were giving you the fling. That's because that's what we have at the moment. There's guys out injured. Kieran Burke, the last year's team captain, fullback, he's out injured. You have the big one would be Charlie Mitchell, but Charlie Mitchell is a greater health rather than soft tissue. So, he may be back, he may not. We don't know the situation there. All we can say is best wishes to him. And the way Johnny Kelly put it after the game was he'll come back into Offaly whenever the doctors say he can and not before. There's a couple of other guys like that would be ready to come back in and will come back in and make an impact. But look, this is an incredibly young team. This is an incredibly young team because, like, I'm not including in those 8 players, Cathal King, Dan Burke, and I'm missing one somewhere. Luke Watkins. I'm not including in those 3 who all started, who would be 2 years out of under 20 instead of 1 year out of under 20. So this is, we don't have the depth, which goes back to when we had that one good team. We are milking them. I would say that for us, it was always going to be the case that the league was a learning experience. They might have gone in and they might have said, okay, We were competitive enough against Waterford in the league round robin game last year. The league final was kind of a weird game against Waterford in that we were dreadful and yet got back to it in 2 or 3 points when we got a couple of goals. They might have said, okay, the Waterford game and being honest, the Galway game were the ones that we would have said coming into the league, okay, these would be the ones that you might target where you could pull off a shock. Um, Waterford have turned out to be pretty good. They came into us in the back of beating Limerick. And it's probably fair to say that Galway against Tip and Cork were better than people would have expected as well. Like it was a big Galway again. It could have won either of those games or both if they got the rub of the green. I wouldn't say they were like hard done by not to win them, but you were extremely competitive against Tip and Cork, the two All Ireland finalists. So Galway are in a much better position. No sleep will be lost. We have a Leinster Championship coming up this year where we have 5 games. One of those is going to Pearse Stadium. Realistically, it'll be the same thing again, but we have Kilkenny and Tullamore. We've actually, we've been competitive enough against Kilkenny at times. I would hope we'd be competitive there, but the big targets will be Wexford and Dublin coming to Tullamore. They'll be the 2 games that the whole thing will hinge on to get at least one win there. And then hopefully, like in a dream world, you win the 2, and then you go into the last game against Kildare and you have a chance to sneak into third. That would be an absolutely fantastic Leinster Championship, and that would represent significant progress for this group. But even one win over a Dublin or Wexford would be progress, given that it's a long time since we've had a championship win against a frontline hurling county.
Just last weekend on Galway, Offaly obviously wasn't available on TV. And this weekend Galway play Waterford, and it feels like a big deciding factor on me on who could possibly join Offaly going down to Division 1B. What's your whole view on this TV coverage? Because if you do go on Exit the Minute or Twitter as formerly known, a lot of people seem to have opinions on this, but it does seem strange this Galway Waterford game that it maybe wasn't one of the chosen games this weekend.
I kind of can see both sides of this, because for me, we're getting into a wider debate here, but like we need to stop looking at Gaelic games through the prism of professional sports. And like we love this argument of it's all about promoting our games, promoting our games. But what make our games great is the atmosphere that's there. Like there was a good crowd in Bar at the weekend. Now, it wasn't a fantastic atmosphere because from midway through the first half, any chance that Offaly might, spook Galway a little bit or keep the game competitive going into the last 15 minutes was gone. So that took the edge out of it. But, it is a live product first and foremost. I accept that the promotion thing is a factor and you want people to be able to keep up with their teams. But like where I don't want to tip too far into this thing that, armchair fans are any good for the GA. Armchair fans are useless. They are of no value to the association. What we're trying to do with our games, we want to encourage people to go to the games, and obviously nobody can go to everything. Like even the likes of you or I can't go to everything. There'll be minor games we'll miss. There'll be under 20 games that maybe we can't make. There'll be a road trip. There'll be ladies matches. There'll be camogie matches. You can't go to everything. So nobody can do that, but you're trying to get people out to as many games as you can. And also you're trying to encourage kids to play. And yes, there is a visibility aspect to that. But kids also get sucked in by the atmosphere at the game. Like, the Offaly under 20 run of 2 years ago, I'd say like the atmosphere at those games was electric. And that's because there is a culture of going. So I just think we have to. There are people out there who would make this argument. Like I had one debate on the same X with a guy who I rate very, very highly, Rob Murphy from Mayo, very intelligent guy, very tuned in, very grassroots, not demeaning the man whatsoever. On this, I completely disagree with him. His logic was every adult game, right down to National Hurling League Division 4, should be streamed. Now, I think that particularly when you go down to the lower tiers, um, if you put the option there to watch it, like losing 50 supporters is a big deal in a National Hurling League Division 3 or Division 4 game. Like, so I'm just, and likewise, I don't want it to always be the case that, like I'm living in Roscommon now at the moment, Offaly native, but I don't want it to always be the case that, every time there's a Roscommon hurling match on, there will always be a Galway versus Waterford or a Cork against Tip, or there'll be something on somewhere that gives the hurling fan the option to go, do you know what? I think it might rain, or Jesus, I'll have to stop and get diesel in the car. Feck it. I have to bring the kids into Supermax, and geez, I've given Pat McDonough enough money down the years. Like I'm just so I guess I'm just saying that ultimately everything can't be on TV and can't be available to see all the time. So I'm not saying the balance is right. I'm not saying, and certainly if you're not part of the sacred cow that is Munster hurling, because woe betide the country. Sure, look, it's a national scandal if Waterford against Clare is not available and every other championship doesn't matter in the slightest. Munster hurling championship is all that matters, and we all have heard that nonsense. So games involving Leinster counties or adopted Leinster counties, as we'll call yourselves, um, they're they won't get the same level of public outrage. But I do take the point. Um, but the other side of it is, if you're on TV once or twice, or you're available to see once or twice during the league, that's not too bad. I don't think it's I don't want us to get in a situation where everything is live and suddenly then games that might have got 500 people at them start getting 300, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, yeah, some good points there in fairness. And just on Galway Waterford this weekend, it's huge, really, in the context of who
Mm.
could potentially go down to Division 1B, isn't it?
Oh, it's massive. Being honest about it, it's massive. Like Kilkenny's 1 point win over Waterford is huge. There's no question Kilkenny are not the force that they were. But look, I mean, people said the same the last year, and look what happened. But for a dodgy scoreboard, maybe they've caused Tipperary problems in the All Ireland semi final. Um, but that being said, hurler for hurler, Galway are in a better place than Kilkenny right now. Um, I still think you're probably. No, not I think you're hurler for hurler. You're a better team than Waterford right now as well, but not by so much that it's a stonewall certainty that you beat them. Not at
Yeah.
all. You know. But you're 100% right. But I think based on how Galway, like, the thing to remember here is that, like, this was Offaly's worst performance in the league so far, but it probably was Galway's worst performance in the league so far too. And if your worst performance of the league so far is still efficient until you win the game and then it falls off a cliff, well, that's not too bad. So I think Galway are in a good position. I think that, yes, I'll be curious to see about how the Dahi Burke thing works out. Um, when he's up against a centre forward who maybe goes, okay, well, I'm not going to make this as handy for you. I'm just looking up here as I'm talking to you. So centre forward for Waterford last time was Kevin Mahoney. Now I don't think he'd be the massive challenge. I'd be interested to see if maybe Ruben Halloran steps across, although Ruben Halloran has been out in the wing more so. Um,
Desi Hutchinson could even come back into.
Desi's not going to be
Yeah.
out in the centre forward
Yeah.
position. Um, but yeah, like Desi could go into the full forward line, and maybe Stephen Bennett goes out.
Yeah.
Something. Now there's a very different challenge. So we'll see how that works out there. We will. I think the wing forward slot, notwithstanding Aaron Island's 3 points, he finished well, but he did the corner forward stuff well, as a wing forward. Um, that'd be my only. They'd be the areas of concern for me. That and particularly like Waterford's half back line. I'm not sure, is it Mark Fitzgerald or Iarla Daly who usually does centre back.
Early Daly, yeah, he's playing six at the minute.
Iarla Daly is
Mark's been full back the last few
yeah,
games, yeah.
but like Paddy Levy is hurling excellent now.
Yeah,
Paddy Levy is hurling very, very well. So there's a threat and something you'll have to think about. So look, it's an excellent game in terms of where Galway are at right now. Um, but I would feel that they'll, if you had offered, I know you'd say, okay, you were always going to beat Offaly, but still, you've 2 points, you've two and a half very good performances. As opposed to Waterford that will feel they've let this one slip, they'll let that one slip against Kilkenny. Ironically, had Waterford beaten Kilkenny, I'd say you'd be grand because you see the problem now is that you could theoretically beat Kilkenny and still get relegated if you don't
yeah.
win this
The
one.
head-to-head is massive from this weekend, really.
Yeah, yeah. So there is that there. But no, I'd still like. I'll put it this way: if you'd asked me who's most likely to get relegated out of the three, I would say Galway is the least of the three. I would probably still pick. Well, look, based on last week's result, it's probably Waterford are the ones who struggle. But the only thing is that Waterford have 4 points on the board already. So like I don't think they'll go down with 6 points if they pick up a win here. Well, they won't go down with 6 points to pick up a win here. Um, but if they don't pick up the win there, are Waterford really going to beat Tipperary? Maybe, maybe.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
wouldn't put it past
It's
them.
it's a and that's the other thing. Like, could Tip get sucked into it yet? Like after because I don't think they will, but going to have to win some games. Like,
Yeah, and even if they were to get sucked into it, the scoring difference is going to come against them from that Limerick defeat.
yes, yeah, completely, completely.
Yeah.
But I'd say again, your head to head is probably the most likely there. So, they'll have that on you. But like that Tip Waterford game now would be a tricky one to call. Look, I'll ease your listeners' concerns. I think Galway will beat Waterford, and that should probably be enough.
That's exactly what I think myself and the listeners wanted to hear there. But Kevin, thanks a million for your time.
No problem at all, Paul. Anytime.
This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Delighted to be joined by former Waterford hurling manager Michael Ryan to get the view on all things Waterford this weekend as they make the trip to Galway to take on Galway in Pearse Stadium on Sunday at 2 o'clock. It's a crucial game for both counties this weekend, and both counties obviously really looking to get 2 points on the board and go one step closer to safety at the minute in Division 1. Hurling, obviously. Michael, thanks very much first off for coming on to the podcast. What's the mood like in Waterford at the minute?
I think there's a little bit of optimism, where we played reasonably well against Kilkenny, had a big victory against Limerick. Didn't see that one coming now, I have to be said. There was a bit of gloom and doom after that first round against Cork, down in Cork. We ran into a tornado on that particular day and were blown apart. The Limerick result, I suppose. We're eternally optimistic in Waterford. Every now and again things are going badly, and then we get one little lift up the ladder, and we tend to get maybe over optimistic at times. But I think people are happy enough the way the panel is coming together. The Ballygunner fellas, some of them are coming back. There's a few more to come back. We have a few injuries. Jack Fagan is out at the moment. Conor Prunty had picked up an injury. I'm led to believe it's serious enough. He may not be playing county this season. But overall, there's a bit of a structure coming into the team. And even yesterday, the way we tried to use the ball, we played around some good 30 and 40 yards passes, got a few scores. So I would say very, very cautiously optimistic. But we know damn well there's big fences left to be jumped, and we're starting with Galway on Sunday.
Looking obviously at that Kilkenny game just gone by at the weekend, Probably disappointing in one aspect. You thought Waterford were going to steal it to the end, but Kilkenny just coming back at the end to edge it by a point. What was your, I suppose, view on that performance and the result?
Well, first of all, we had a very bad first 20 minutes. We went 5 or 6 points down playing, and I was at the game. I was doing the commentary for WLR, co-commentary with Kieran. There was a very strong breeze blowing down into the O'Loughlin's end. And we had a very bad start. We went 1-3 to a point down, playing against the wind. Then somehow we hauled our way back into it, and it was, well, I think we were a point into the half time. Second half against the breeze, I thought we played really, really well and used the ball well and created some opportunities. Got most of them, but missed a couple as well. But we were 2 points up probably with a minute to go in normal time. But they got the last 3 points of the game. So disappointed we didn't get something out of it. I felt our performers deserved to get something out of it. But having said that, there's a few lessons to be learned as well. There was a few times we didn't take the best option and maybe didn't use the ball as well as we could have. But overall, that second half was very, very encouraging.
Yeah, and just nearly had it, but it's just, I suppose you're playing Kilkenny, going no more than anything. They're just never bet.
Yeah, and like they never give up. It's not the best Kilkenny team of all time, but just not back on Waterford again there for a moment. There was a semblance of seeing the way the team wants to play the game. Donal O'Rourke has come in. He was with Cork for a few years there, beating two All-Ireland finals. And there was a semblance of trying to use the ball properly. I thought in the first half we got caught. Some of our passing in the backline was too short. We got turned over. They got a few scores. But in the second half, we seemed to play those, instead of 10-yard passes, we were playing 30 and 40 yards passes. One particular example was a brilliant score with Jamie Bannon was involved, Stephen Bennett. We sprayed the ball around, got 3 or 4 really good passes and got the score. So there was a semblance of what the management team are trying to do, and hopefully that's an encouraging sign for the future. As regards Kilkenny, I mean, I've been involved in Kilkenny hurling for the last 2 years with Tullaroan. It's certainly not at an all-time high in Kilkenny. There's a lot of work to be done there. They've lost Hugh Lawler, probably the best fullback in the country, and Mikey Butler was a bit better yesterday. He didn't have a great year last year. He had a couple of great years when he started off, but you can see what they're trying to do. Michael Carey's back, fullback. I'd say from watching Michael Carey over the years, he'd much prefer to be further out the field. But they're obviously trying to change from the old Kilkenny mantra of lowering the ball and lumping the ball and having fellas to win their own ball. They're trying to do the game now the way it's gone around the country, trying to spray 30 and 40 yards passes around. That takes a bit of time, but having said that, I mean, can he win the Leinster Championship in the All-Ireland semi-final if they get there? Nobody will want to play him. The last 2 years, the Clare goalie Eva Quilligan made 3 brilliant saves 2 years ago to stop Kenny winning. And last year, they gave away a couple of bad goals, and there was a bit of controversy at the end as regards the scoreboard. So they're never far away. But I think, they probably have more work to do now as of this time of the year than they had in the last 5 or 6 years. So they'll be looking to find new players and new solutions.
It's obviously year two now of Peter Queally, and as you mentioned, he's added Donal O'Rourke to the management team this year. Are you beginning to see progress? Obviously, it's 2 defeats and 2 wins so far out of your 4 games in the Allianz Hurling League.
Well, I'm beginning to see a pattern of play, the way we're trying to use the ball. And, we don't have the biggest team in town. A lot of our fellas are physically not very tall, and, under high balls are going to be caught out. So we have to use the ball very well, move the ball very quickly, not carry the ball into contact, and avoid all that. And they're starting to see a pattern of developing. There's a lot of work to be done as regards that. And, we need everybody on the pitch. We need our best 15 on the pitch, and we need our best 20 players available to play, because we just don't have the pool of players or the panel of players that the like of Cork, Tip and Kilkenny have, and probably Galway should have as well, because just looking at Galway there, they won 4 All-Ireland minors in a row, and they also won in 15. It's time for those fellas to come through now. There should be a pool of players somewhere in Galway. We won a minor All-Ireland last year with a really good team, but Cork and Tip have 3 or 4 of those teams, so it's more difficult for us. So we've got to mind the fellas we have and get the best out of them, and hopefully steer clear of injuries and try and develop a pattern of play, which the management are trying to do now, of playing a system that best suits us. But I think we're starting to do that.
You mentioned there, obviously trying to develop a pattern of play. There still is no point in saying otherwise. If you look at Jamie Barron's performance, Stephen Bennett, they're 2 crucial players, aren't they?
Yeah, I've said this before, and I mean this in a complimentary type of way. They're almost difficult to play with those guys, because they're on a different level as the guys thinking. They're like the really good chess players. They're 3 or 4 moves ahead. I mean, Stephen Bennett, there's a video going around of the injuries he suffered and how he's playing at all is remarkable. And what a player. And Jamie Barron as well. Those two are top players in any era. They'd be under serious consideration for the Waterford's best Waterford team of all time. So they're absolutely crucial to what we do. But Jamie will be 33 later on this year, and I think Stephen is 30 or maybe 30, coming 31. So they're around a good while. So, but we can't leave it all to those two guys. The rest of the fellas have got to chip in as well and do their bit. And I think our goalkeeper's been very, very good. I mean, Stephen O'Keefe was a legend of a keeper. But you know, Billy Nolan, even yesterday, a couple of brilliant saves, and he's dictating the play and he's spraying the ball around. We probably need to give more options on puck outs. Everybody blames the coach and the goalkeeper for the puck outs, but unless you've got the movement out the field, you know, it's very hard to find somebody in this day and age. But there is a lot of good things, but everybody has to put their shoulders to the wheel, and we acknowledge and appreciate how lucky we are to have Stephen Bennett and Jamie Barron with us. But everybody else has got, and on that note, actually, I think Shane Bennett is playing really, really well this year. That's not an accident because he's back now playing in the half-back line or out around the middle of the field where he played a lot of his underage hurling. I often felt he wasn't comfortable up front because he doesn't like that close attention. But he's a really, really good player as well. So, you know, everybody moving well. We're going in the right direction. But we will find out an awful lot more about ourselves this Sunday when we go to Salt Hill.
Was Caleb Lyons an injury yesterday?
It looked to me from where I didn't hear otherwise. It looked to me as if he was because he came off fairly early. Again, he's been away for 18 months and he's missed a fair bit of training. I know he played a little bit out in Australia, but that's nowhere near related to what's happening around and the intensity of the Irish game. I think he'd be fine if he recovers some injury. And he's a big option for us because he can actually play wing back, he can play midfielder, he can play wing forward. He's very versatile. And he's also capable of getting points from 70 or 80 yards as well. So hopefully he's not too serious. I haven't heard was it an injury, but I would suspect that it was.
Just looking at the Ballygunner players then involved yesterday, Aaron O'Neill at cornerback, Paddy Levy at wing back, Kevin Mahoney in the half forward line, and obviously Desi Hutchinson involved. It's a total of 4 Ballygunner players. Would you expect more Ballygunner players to be involved this weekend, or how's it looking?
Well, Ian Kenny was on the panel. He didn't play. I think he's a big player for us. I mean, Barry Coughlin give 10 or 12 years fullback, even for Waterford and Ballygunner. Really good player, a very underestimated player. But Ian Kenny came in last year for the club and played fullback, and he played most of his hurling cornerback. But and club teams try to put in big fellas on top of Ian Kenny, but I thought he played really, really well. He's an important player for us. Desi again, you know, Desi probably didn't have his best year last year. He's been an exceptional player in the past. He had a very good club championship. And that has to be encouraging. And I thought Paddy Levy was outstanding yesterday because for most of the game, he was tasked with mapping Owen Cody. And Owen Cody got 2 points. But compared to the influence that Owen Cody could have or you'd expect him to have, I thought Paddy Levy did a wonderful job on him. And Aaron O'Neill probably got caught for the goal by Mossy Keown, who was a wily campaigner. But I thought he recovered excellently after that and played really well as well. So, you know, there is 1 or 2 more Ballygunner fellas to come back. And we can't be depending on Ballygunner.
Patrick Fitzgerald is still injured, is he? Or?
Patrick Fitzgerald, I think, is having an operation. I'm told he may not be around for the county scene either. So, again, a top-class player now. He was involved in Waterford under 20s for a few years and minor. He's a really, really good player. And if he's not available, he'll be a loss. But, look, injuries are part and parcel of this game. We've got to get on with it. But it isn't just about Ballygunner. And a lot of people want to give out about Ballygunner. I don't know why, because Ballygunner are so good because they have a culture in their club of doing things properly. And if you look at all their underage teams, there's adult senior players involved in the coaching. So everything is right in Ballygunner. We should all take a good look at them and take a leaf out of their book and try and move on our own clubs. But Ian certainly will improve things. There might be 1 or 2 more as well. But you know, there's and Jack Fagan could be a big player for us as well. So Jack Prendergast came back yesterday. I thought we got a great boost from our substitutes yesterday. I mean, we had a young fella from came on and Fennel, and he scored 3 points. And Jack came on and made an imprint as well. Desi set up a point. Kevin Mahoney, for some reason, didn't have his best game yesterday, and that does happen. He worked really, really hard, and the game seemed to bypass him. But you see, as I said originally, Paul, we need everybody, and we even need a little bit of luck as well, because we're short of numbers. We don't have big panels of players.
Just there, obviously, you mentioned Ballygunner. It'll be Ballygunners and some of the Loughrays players, obviously, their second time meeting this year from that club final. But obviously, everyone's well aware of the Ballygunner second team progressing into senior level in Waterford. What's your own views on that?
Well, I mean, people have decided. I don't have a problem with it, but I do think when it did happen, I have no problem with it putting in with a second team. But the one thing that did surprise me was that when their second team is knocked out of the championship, those players can go play with the first team. I would never have agreed to that in a million years. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. How can you play for two different teams in the same championship? Maybe if they come into the Munster Championship, they'll even join up. But from my opinion, that should never happen. But as Challow did this in 1984, 83, 84, 85, they had two senior teams in the championship. In my opinion, they should be separate teams. But anyway, they're here now, and we got to live with it. But it's a testimony to the wonderful work that's going on in that club, and Jason Ryan has come in now, and he's re-energized the whole thing again, and Darragh O'Sullivan did a wonderful job. But they're a top club doing the right thing. As regards, as I said, that's the only little caveat I have, that they shouldn't be allowed to come back in and join the first team if the second team is knocking out, unless of course the two teams meet in the county final, and that I don't see it happening. But you never know, Ballygunner, because they will do their best to be at their best, if you know what I mean.
Obviously, we're mentioning some of the more experienced players. Obviously, Mark Fitzgerald, unbelievable year last year, getting nominated for an All-Star. Ruben Holleran's probably been one of the finds of the league for Waterford this year. Sean Walsh yesterday with 1-2. Sean Mackey coming on with 3 points. Ailey Daly's a few years down the road now as part of this Waterford team. So, like, a lot of these younger players now are beginning to step up for Waterford.
Yeah, and we need every single one of them. And Sean Mackey again, I think that this may even be his first year on the panel. I think he's only 20 years of age, but he was outstanding yesterday, because he gave us a lift when we badly needed a lift. And you're right, and Ailey Daly and his brother as well. I think he might be out injured at the moment, but we need that base, because we need fellas coming through all the time. As regards Mark Fitzgerald, I've gone on record before. I was lucky enough to be part of a Waterford under-20 management team that we had Mark Fitzgerald playing. And he's a Rolls Royce of a player. He's a top-class player. Ideally, I'd love to see him playing wing-back, because I think he'd scored a few points in wing-back. Not so sure about him at centre-back, because sometimes he's too anxious to go up the field. Played really well yesterday at full-back. I mean, he's quick. He's a good hurler. He brings the ball out very well. He's a good striker. He's as brave as a lion. And sometimes I think he might be a little bit hard on himself. He's actually better than he realises himself, but fantastic, fantastic player. And anywhere you play Mark Fitzgerald, you know what you'll get. You'll get a 9 out of 10 performance, but I love watching him play.
Michael, how desperate are you to see Waterford get out of Munster and get into that top three? Obviously, since the round robin has come in, they've failed to get out of Munster. But obviously, once they get out of Munster, it'll be huge, no matter how they get out of Munster.
Yeah, well, if you can spell that word "despot" in the biggest capital letters you can think of, we're absolutely despoted. And just to go back for a moment, we won the All-Ireland final in 20, we won the semi-final in 21. Both of those years, because of the COVID, there was no Munsters, there was no round robin in Munster. We feel we could compete really well with all those teams in Leinster. I've no doubt about that. We're stuck in a little bit of a rut in Munster, and our first game is away to Clare on the 19th of April. That's a huge game for us. And Clare have a fantastic, super record in Cusack Park. But so we've got to go up there, and realistically now, we've got to get a result there. Whether it be a draw or a win, we've got to get it there. Not easy thing to do. But, I'd hope that the fact that we are playing in Division 1 hurling and they're playing in Division 1B, effectively Division 2, that might give us a little bit of an advantage as well. So that's going to be crucial. But we're absolutely desperate. I think the round robin probably doesn't suit us, and that's not making an excuse. And for the reason that you're playing intense games in such a short period of time, and we're probably a bit short of numbers to do that. But Clare have done it. And I think they have the best record in the round robin in Munster, which is incredible. So we've got to forget about those excuses, get the focus right, try and stay in Division 1. That's important from a psychological point of view. It's also important from a finance point of view, because the only money goes back into the counties apart from rent from matches is the National League, and it's costing huge money now to run teams. So, and also it would be a great boost to stay in Division 1 going into the Munster Championship. But believe me, when we go to Ennis on the 19th, we've got to come out of the traps that day, and we're going to have to produce the best performance we did in 4 or 5 years. If we get a result there, then we can think about coming out of Munster. But everything, that's the be all and end all. That's all I'll find at the moment.
When people think of Galway Waterford, they'll automatically think back to 2017. But I suppose the thing about thinking back to 2017, if you look at it from a Galway and Waterford perspective, there's only a few players from both of those teams still involved.
Yeah, and I mean, Galway have some exceptional guys. Those two Manions. I remember being involved at Westmeath. We played against the college team in Galway when they were playing. I remember thinking that day their attitude was absolutely fantastic. You have Dahi Burke, of course, still hanging around, and what a player he's been for Galway. And you have this Wilson, there's Conor Whelan as well.
Conor Whelan, yeah.
Conor was on the under-21 team that Waterford beat in 16, but you have like a Tom Monaghan, you have Gavin Lee around the place as well. So from your point of view, we've only got a few left as well. The Jamies and the Steers. We have a few fellas still hanging around, but that game will have no bearing. I mean, that game for me is a bit of a regret, because I think we'd played Galway 10 times in the championship before that game, and then we've won every single one of those games. That was the first time they ever beat us in the championship, and I thought we gave them maybe too much respect in the first 20 minutes of that game. Now, my good friend Joe and a few more hit points that day. They were incredible scores, but I just thought we gave them too much respect. And we're missing Conor Leeson as well that day, who would be one of our best man markers, but we gave him a platform to win the game. And although we did come back to level, or maybe go a point up in the second half, but that was a game we could have won. But I mean, could and would, even both were never in the true story. So they went on and won it, and they'd been around for a few years as well. They'd been beat at a few finals and came back to the final again the following year. That was still a good Galway team with a lot of good players on it. But I mean, there's a few left on both sides, but. You're talking about, when I see the Galway team now, I mean, I'm impressed by some of those young fellas. They have Colin Malloy. He got a goal last year. He got 3 points. You have young Nyland, and you also have Jason Rabbit. And there's a lot of talk about him. There's probably a bit of pressure on him because his father played for Galway and was a good player, and also his sister, by the way, she shouldn't be forgotten. I saw her playing the Camogie there. But I hope they don't put too much pressure on that young man. But there's young fellas coming through in Galway, and there's a nice Ronan Glennon is around as well. He's been there for a few years. There's a nice blend of youth and experience in Galway. And remember, you do have an all-Ireland winning manager, and also won the club, because I know I was managing De La Salle the day Town Bridge Pedersen in the semi-final in 2010. So I would have kept in touch with Hall over the years, and our top-class manager. And I think he's done a bit of weeding out. He's graded some of the older guys. That needs to be done. Liam Cahill did it in Tipperary. Is tough, but it has to be done. But you have a man up there, who knows how to win matches, and if you stick with him and give a bit of patience and keep the young fellas coming through, he will do something with that Galway team. Hopefully not on Sunday, but I have great respect for all.
You obviously have great memories yourself, probably, of coming up against Galway, whether it was with Waterford. I remember back in 2012, you were telling me off air up in Pearse Stadium, you came up with them obviously against Westmeath, and as you mentioned, even there, when De La Salle played Clarenbridge. So plenty of memories of coming up against Galway in your managerial career.
Yeah, it didn't come out on the right side too often. That day in Galway, 2012, we'd lost the first 3 league games. We'd played Cork in the first round of the league down in Parkgate Ring, and Jimmy Barry Murphy's first game in his second term as manager, and Cork people really came out in droves that day, and it was almost a prodigal son, or the Messiah, I suppose I should say, about Jimmy Barry coming back. And we lost the first 3 games of the league, and then we went to Galway and we had to win. And I remember the day, I think James Scale got picked up a shoulder injury, and Shane Welsh got a vital goal. Milan hadn't played the first 3 games, and he came that day and he made a big difference as well. So good memories of that particular day. The day about Clarenbridge, I mean, what a game that was. No consolation. to me as Abdullah Saleh, because we were a point or two up in added time and extra time, and then they got a goal to win. The midfielder came through a ricocheted goal, and they went on to win that All Ireland by 10 or 12 points. And in fairness to Micheál, I'd probably never spoken to Micheál, only a handshake. He went to the trouble of looking up my number the following day. I was at a match down in Wexford. I was so sick and so disappointed. But he went to the trouble of searching out my phone number and giving me a ring that day. And something I appreciate, because not many managers, winning managers, do things like that. So a lot of memories with Galway, not always good ones, but hopefully different part to me now as I'm doing the radio co-commentary for this match in Galway on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to going up to Pearse Park. My first time back there was 2012. We wouldn't have a good record up there. I think there was 1 year since we threatened to win the game, and I think it was 17. I played a lot of subs, and I think we put on the handbrake that day and gave that game away and came back to haunt us in the All-Ireland final. So I would have huge respect for Galway hurling, and I was watching that Laker Gale programme on Cyril Farrell there lately, and I would have got into my car in the 80s and driven up to Galway to see Galway training sessions. And I always liked Farrell's style. His attitude.
You would have driven from Waterford up to
Yep.
watch Galway sessions, yeah?
Yeah, watch Galway training. There were other occasions I would have made it a point of being in holidays. My wife Catherine would have made it a point of being in holidays in Galway, maybe a week or two before the All-Ireland final or semi-final. And I remember Farrell. You could hear Farrell shouting from 3 parishes away, and I love his bullish attitude that we're not here to pay homage to the big guns. We're here to do something for ourselves. And won the All-Ireland, lost the following year, stepped away, came back again, and won 2 more All-Irelands. And that Laker Gale programme, I think, did him justice as well, because he's a fella. He's easy to like. He has passion coming out his ears, and he's a hell of a guy, and did an awful lot for Galway hurling. I mean, how many managers have won 3 All-Irelands in hurling? Not very many.
It must have really stood out for you there when you're talking about coming up from Waterford to watch those Galway sessions. You obviously must have learned a lot from going up to watch it, did you?
Well, I would have jumped in my car and drove down to see Kerry train with Mick O'Dwyer, and if I was, I actually went. Funny story. I actually went to see the Galway footballers trained in 1983. I think Matty McDonagh was the manager, and they were training in Pearse Stadium, and I go in to watch it. I'm sitting down on my own, and he comes over to me. Love the mercy of Matty McDonagh. Now, the only Connacht man to win 4 All-Ireland medals in football, as far as I know. He came over to me and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What's your name?" I think he thought I was a spy with Dublin, but I said, "Don't worry about it, Matty." I said, "I'm from Waterford. We're no big threat to anybody down in Waterford against playing football." So we had a conversation then about it. But I always feel that even today, I have club minor coaching in an hour's time. I feel you're learning all the time, and if you go and see the top guys, training or coaching, you'll learn something. That doesn't mean you can't put your own print on it, and you can't make your own contribution. And so I like to think I'm learning all the time, and if I get a good idea, I go with it, and if I don't, I don't. So, but very enjoyable days, traveling around to watch training sessions and watch coaching sessions, and hopefully the health will stay with me to do that for years to come.
You're obviously really still enjoying it there. You talk about being involved with your club minor teams. You've been with inter-county teams, still doing co-commentary. You still love watching hurling as much as ever?
Yeah, I'm actually writing our club history at the moment. So there's one thing about the GA. There's always a way to be involved, and I love going to see games as well. And I love watching good players. And one thing I learned a long time ago, I think it's something that's helped me to really enjoy the game, is to really enjoy the game of hurling or even football. You have to stop disliking and hating the players on the other teams, and go and enjoy and watch what they do and enjoy what they do, because and the skill levels of hurling at the moment are gone through the roof. I would think people talk about things in the past, and a lot of great players in the past, and but I would think the game of hurling now, the skill levels now are the highest they've ever been. I mean, you watch the way the first touch. People say there's no ground hurling, and there is no ground hurling for 2 reasons. Number one, the 33-inch hurl is probably what how you reach the ground. And number 2, when the ball is on the ground, it's a 50-50 ball. I mean, the coaches of the modern era have decided that it's a possession-based game now. So if you keep possession and use the ball well, you're going to get scores. So you can't afford to be taking those chances of playing the ball along the ground. I had a big conversation with a guy last week, And he said, hurling is finished. There's no ground hurling. I think it was only struck. There was a couple of years ago, I saw a stat. The ball was only played in the ground 4 times in an All-Ireland final. But that's the way the game has gone now. And it is evolving the whole time. And Kilkenny back and they won those All-Irelands with catching high balls. And somebody else decided then that, you've got to move. Limerick came in with a different kind of game again. There's a lot of running off the shoulder. Something I've noted that Galway are doing a fair bit of now as well, coming off the shoulder. And the game is constantly evolving and different methods coming in. But now it's a very much a possession-based game now with ferocious tackling. And turning over now is almost celebrated like a score. But I do like the way the game is going. Difficult for referees, I have to say, because first of all, the hand pass, it's very hard to know what's a hand pass and what's not a hand pass. And just, we could do a little bit more consistency in refereeing. Some fellas are, pulling for 5 steps. More fellas are allowing an awful lot of tackling, but difficult to do. I think the referees could do it, maybe being coached in a different way. But I have sympathy for referees because it's a tough job. But I'm never enjoying the game as much as I'm enjoying it now, because it's a really good spectacle. And I remember a few years ago, I was in San Francisco, and my son-in-law was over there, and they asked me to take a coaching session, and which I did. But there was this guy looking on across the bay in San Francisco, and it was a fairly tough physical battle. And he approached me after the training session, and he said he'd obviously never seen hurling before. And he said, "Gee, man," he said, "would you mind telling me what kind of weapons those guys are using?" So there's a bit of fun thrown in along the way as well. But that's the spectacle it is, and long may it continue and may it get better. And hopefully counties like Waterford and Dublin and a few more. I think if Dublin won a hurling All-Ireland, it would be wonderful for the game. It would be better if Waterford won one. But it's great to see the way the game is evolving, and huge respect for Clare as well. The way they came back and they won 2. Loughnane came along, and Loughnane was a bit like Cyril Farrell, that he refused to bow down to anybody. And he said Clare wasn't the most popular team, not interested in that, because it's not a popularity contest, and puts serious system in place as well. So, there's a lot of good. Even I was up in Westmeath, had a wonderful time in Westmeath. Well, I really enjoyed my 4 years up there, and a lot of very passionate people involved in hurling in Westmeath. So down in Kerry as well, there are clubs who don't play football. So there's a lot of pockets around the country that hurling is played. I think the GA has a duty of care now to develop the game more. I mean, there was a couple of years there we didn't have a director of hurling. Can you believe it? We didn't have a director of hurling. I mean, they brought in Willem Harris come in now, and he seems to be very impressive. So, I mean, everything is got in most counties is got by good structures, good preparation, good coaching. So the sky is the limit, and hopefully it'll go on and get better and better and better.
We're obviously there talking about, I suppose, the threats Waterford are going to carry this weekend. And you mentioned earlier on about Galway. The youth have done really well for Galway so far. Encouraging performances against Tipperary and Cork for Galway, and obviously good for them to get their first victory against Offaly on Sunday. They'll now look to get their first home victory of the year against Waterford. But you've been impressed so far from what you've seen with Galway?
I have, and I think there's a slightly different. What I've seen is they're starting to run the ball more and use the ball more, and playing 1-2s and maybe 1-2-3s and coming off the shoulder. A lot of that, and they still have fellas who can. I think this McLaughlin got a great point against Cork, and of course the Manions can put the ball over the bar from the second next field, and there's a lot of good things happening in Galway. It will be interesting to see what way they approach this game. I know they will be all out to win it, and I'll be interested to see what way they go about it. And then they have 2 more games left, and the Leinster Championship, to be honest, is the standard is not high, and they kind of get a bit defensive in Leinster. If you talk about, I mean, compared to Munster, the standard is lower, and this is borne out by the fact that since 2015, Munster counties have won every single All-Ireland, apart from the one that Galway won, and you could nearly say the other Leinster county, but you know what I mean. So Galway have a lot to look forward to. And unless they slip up badly, they'll come out of Leinster. They might even come out as Leinster champions this year, and that means they're in the business end of the season. So new players developing, building the team. Mihall's imprint becoming greater and greater, and I think it's Francis Ford is with him and Noel Larkin.
Yeah.
And I think Eamon O'Shea stepped away. For some reason, that didn't seem to really work with Eamon O'Shea. And like he's a top guy, and he did wonderful things for Tipperary in 2010. And sometimes it just doesn't work for people. I don't know what happened there, but Galway will always be a threat. And look at Galway's clubs, the record in the All-Ireland Club Championship. Even though I would contend they've got a big advantage, they're in the semi-final before they start. But I think is it
I
seven?
still have to win it now.
Is it 7 or 8 Galway clubs have won the All-Ireland Club Championship?
Yeah.
From the outside looking in, it appears at times as if it's almost too competitive. And do they bring this? They actually flake one another on the Galway Championship. I'm just wondering, do they get the bond right when it comes to playing with Galway? But I think you've got the man now to sort that out. And exciting times for Galway and hurling. I think, you have a nice blend of youth and experience. You have the management, the structures. Some of those minors should still be around. So if you can get the best out of everybody, it'll be a match for anybody.
We were probably talking there, and I mentioned it in my intro that both Galway and Waterford will look to go one step closer to safety this weekend. Obviously, after this weekend, Waterford would have played 5 games. They'll obviously have Tipperary to come, and Galway will have Kilkenny and Limerick left. It's huge this weekend. There's no point of saying otherwise. For probably both counties, there's been positivity, but on Sunday now, all that matters for Galway and Waterford this weekend is getting a result. And I suppose for Waterford, they'll be looking to move on to 6 points, and Galway will be looking on move on to 4 points with 2 games to go.
Well, if Waterford were to win the match, they'll have 6 points.
Yeah, that
They
should keep
won't,
them safe.
they won't be caught by Offaly because and the most Galway can get is 6 points. And Waterford have the head to head. The only way then they could be caught is if you had 3 teams on 6 points and scoring difference. So either way, and if Galway win the match, realistically they'll have four. They'll have the head to head on Waterford. Now Waterford could still beat Tipperary in the last match. We always play well against Tip. I wouldn't rule that out. But having said that, it is a massive game if you want to stay in the division, which both teams do. So I said it's a hell of a game. So it's I wouldn't say it's a definite relegation game, but it's very, very close to it.
Yeah, it's nearly like the first one of we've really had in the league, isn't it? Like up to now,
Yeah.
it's for teams getting results, but this is the first game where I suppose relegation is sort of coming into the equation, not for the teams now, but for supporters when they look at the games to go.
Yeah, the safety net is disappearing after this, and a win for either team psychologically, team development, confidence, and staying in the league. For all of those reasons, it's a huge game, and I'm looking forward to it. And the only thing is, you tend to have very strong wind up there, and
Yeah.
up there, and so I'll be getting my cap tied onto my head. But hopefully, I'd love to see a calm, dry day up there and let both teams go at it, and then may the best horse jump the fence.
Yeah, it can really be a springboard for both, can't it? Heading
It
into
can,
the
of course.
championship.
It can, of course, yeah, and I think to be huge for Galway as well to win the game. I mean, the first night against Tipperary, the conditions were horrific. Was it 5 or 6 points? Was it in the end? And there were periods in the Cork game where they hurled really well. They went 5 or 6 points up in that Cork game as well, and Cork got a couple of goals near the end. Brian Hayes came on and got 2 goals. So it'll be huge for both teams, and I think the winner will be in a very good place. Whoever the winner is, I don't know, and whoever the winner is will be in a very good place. So there's an awful lot at stake, and there's a lot to play for. But there's also, I hope the spectators turn out, and I know Galway will probably bring a big following. I hope the Waterford supporters travel up as well, because I think this team is worth following, and the management are going the right way about it. So something to look forward to, and I'm certainly looking forward to making the trip up myself.
How do you see it going, Michael?
Well, last week, for the first time in my life, I tipped Kilkenny to beat Waterford, and Kieran O'Connor put the gun to my head. I said on the basis that they have probably 12 of their starting team out, I really would give Waterford a chance in this game. I think we might just nick it by. I'll settle for half a pint, Paul.
We'll be hoping you'll be wrong there now. We'll be hoping that we can turn Waterford over at home this weekend. Sunday at 2 o'clock, obviously, the game gets underway. Michael, thanks a million for your time this evening.
It's been an absolute privilege. I look forward to seeing some friends I have up in Galway as well. Take care. God bless.